Lieutenant Commander Data has scaled all available literature on parenting. Wesley Crusher is late for his haircut. And the word lal in Hindi means beloved. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 16, entitled The Offspring, written by Rene Echeverria, directed by Jonathan Frakes. Very special thanks to Oliver James Manal for sponsoring this one. And this was March 10th, 1990. Where were you? We have a very special guest today. We are thrilled. We're over the moon. We are ecstatic. Rene Echeverria is joining us today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Rene. How are you today?
Good to be with you guys. Good to see you.
Awesome.
Welcome.
So, first things first, Rene, first of all, this was an amazing episode. Absolutely love it. One of the best, most popular episodes ever.
Yes.
This was your first writing assignment or your first written episode in Star Trek. Is that correct? And can you please take us through that process?
Sure. No, it is true. So the show episode holds a dear place in my heart because it was my first Star Trek episode. It was my first professional television credit. It came about a circuitous path. I was living in New York at the time. I'd graduated college and moved to New York. I'd been knocking around there for 5 or 6 years, working as a waiter, waiting tables to support myself. And the new Star Trek show came on the air, and I was a huge fan of the original series. So I sort of tuned in and was checking it out. And at some point got it in my head, could I do that? I have I was thinking I would think of stories and I'd be like, and so one day I decided to sit down and start writing them. And I kind of taught myself screenwriting that way, with a few drafts of different stories. Gosh, it's been a long time, but I kind of remember the first one I did was kind of a anti-nuclear war screed. Remember, this is 1988, probably. Cold War is still happening. We got all these missiles pointed at Russia, and they have all these missiles pointed at us, and it was a very topical thing. And I don't know, it was something along the lines of some of our people are in a shuttlecraft, and it goes drifting, into somebody's space, and they think both sides think it's the enemy, and they almost trigger a nuclear war. So it was very, I think didactic is the word, but like I said, I was teaching myself, and I also didn't know anything about the business, so I didn't know. I just found Paramount Pictures' address and put it in an envelope and sent it to them, to whom it was concerned.
That worked?
Wow.
No, that didn't work.
Okay.
That didn't.
Okay.
And I didn't hear back, but I was sort of undaunted. I was young, I was ambitious, and I wrote another one, a different story. And I didn't hear back from them either. So I decided that this was going to be my last shot, and I just had the idea, just thinking about the characters. And I think I'd seen an interview with Gene Roddenberry, or probably read an interview with Gene Roddenberry, because this is all pre-internet, even getting Paramount Pictures' address was like detective work,
Right.
You have to call like people in LA. Do you have a phone book? Can you stuff for me? But anyway,
free Google.
I had read an interview, probably in TV Guide magazine, which is another thing that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you used to get in the Sunday paper, a flyer with a little booklet with what was going to be on TV that week. It was just a different world. But anyway, I read Gene say something about Data was Pinocchio, and that his greatest hope was to be human, to be, like Pinocchio. And that's when it clicked, this idea, well, what makes us human? Well, perhaps the desire to be a father, the desire to have children. And that was the inspiration.
Wow.
The script that you sent in, how close was it to what we ended up seeing on screen? And was there a process of rewrites that you went through, or coming in pitching the idea? How did that end up going?
Well, so I sent it in, and what I didn't know is that at that point, Michael Piller had become the executive producer of the show. None of the episodes with his name on it had aired yet, so I didn't know, and he had also had the realization that there's a lot of fans out there, who have ideas. I think Ron Moore, who had recently been hired on staff, sort of showed him that, and he's the one who had just begun this program of reading spec scripts and hiring readers to do coverage, it's called in Hollywood, but very unusual for a television show. But Star Trek was unusual. It did have this fan base. And Michael knew, that the most precious thing to make the show fly was the quality of the stories. So I got lucky, and it got read by one of these readers. And months had gone by since I'd sent it in. And at that point, I'd kind of moved on. My girlfriend at the time said, yeah, you probably need to think about something else,
Don't quit your day job.
Yeah.
And then I was having lunch with a friend of mine in the East Village, and she comes running in breathlessly and says, Star Trek called. And I came running, and you'd have cell phones in those days even, go running back to the apartment, and then fifth floor walk up, I'm breathless. I called back this person, Michael Piller, and Sirach, him, he's a very gentle man, and he said, what you long to hear. He said, I love this script. It's one of the best spec scripts I've ever read.
Wow.
We want you to come out here next week or the week after at the latest, because we need some rewrites for it to work for the show. But we'll deal with all that when you get here. And I don't know anything. I'm like, well, do I have to buy my own plane ticket? And he says, we'll pay you back. And what do I say? I'm asking the executive producer, and I had never seen his name before. And I said, hey, by the way, last question, what do you do? He goes, well, Rene, I'm the executive producer and I'm the head writer. And I'm like, okay, cool.
That works.
Yeah. He's like, well, Rene, you hope that I'm your new boss.
That's right. And he was so patient with me, I have to say. So I flew out, and at the time, Ira Bear was on the staff of Next Generation. Hans Beimler was on the staff. Ron Moore, as I mentioned, was a staff writer. He was very nervous because he was on a week-to-week contract. So he didn't like me at all. He's like, who is this guy coming in here? He thought I was out to get his job, and I was. But they basically told me, yes, we love it, but it has to completely change. So, and that was my, because I think in my original incarnation, to get around to your question, a couple things. One was that Data was the father and the ship's computer was the mother. So he had somehow combined the programming. And so there were some cute, funny scenes, where basically Data and the computer are arguing about how to raise her, but things about her choosing her appearance and her species and her gender, that was there. But the jeopardy came about because someone had implanted a computer virus in the ship's computer. and it inadvertently got into her, and it was a and computer virus. That was a new thing, that I had read about.
Yeah.
As it turns out, they had already been working on an episode that hadn't aired yet, so they needed a new Jeopardy line. They were very behind schedule. This was, I think, late in the season. Everyone was being pulled in many different directions. The writers, they were sort of short-staffed. We had maybe 2 meetings in the Hart Building. And we basically didn't really come up with a lot. Ron told me later that when I left, all the writers turned to each other and said, "Oh man, that kid is so hosed." Because Michael at a certain point was like, "Oh, just go do your best. Go do." They were thrilled that it was going to be a bottle show. It was not. They were way behind, way over budget, so it was an inexpensive show to produce. It was basically 2 guest stars and some simple effects.
Yeah.
And I went off and wrote my draft. And the main brief was, make sure you show us her growth. How she grows. It should be all about that. And maybe the idea of the malfunction was in there. I don't remember. But I sent it in with great high hopes. And then I got the call that you don't want it yet. And Michael Piller called me and said, "Hi, it's Michael." And well, you know Sirach, you know Michael, he gentle and kind, but blunt. And he goes,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
right to the point.
yeah, you kind of screwed the pooch here. I'm afraid. It just doesn't work at all. We're going to take it over from here." And then very kindly he said, "I think, Rene, I think maybe you choked a little." And I kind of bristled at that, but you know what he said? And he went on to say, he said, I gather this is probably the first time you've ever written something professionally. And I know that for the first time, someone's looking over your shoulder. Whereas before, everything you ever wrote, you did it for yourself, and this sort of abstract reader. Here, so I think maybe you choked. But anyway, and it was, I thought I had just gotten my big break in the business and I had botched it, so I was devastated. And the person who did most of the rewrite was Melinda Snodgrass. And I'm very grateful to her because, she could have easily arbitrated to add her name to the script. And I'm confident she would have gotten that in an arbitration. And the culture at the time was Michael really wanted people to arbitrate, for credit on things. He felt he wanted the credits to accurately reflect who did the work. And she declined to, and so it aired with my name on it. And it was my idea, and it had some scenes that I wrote, but the whole Admiral Heftel story, that was the new Jeopardy that they sort of sustained the hour, and then and a lot of the trajectory. I think Melinda was a parent. Michael Piller was a parent. Some grown-ups came in and wrote it. I was 20. I don't know, 27, 28 years old. I was a long way before I had my first child. So, and I think they brought a lot of perspective and a gentle humor about things to it. And it turned out to be very lovely.
Yeah, well, Rene, obviously you did something still very well because you went on to write a ton more in Star Trek afterwards. Was it immediate, or did you have to pitch again? What was the next step in you becoming more a part of the writers' team?
I recall calling Michael Piller and asking him if I could pitch ideas, and he said, "Sure, sure." And he let me pitch directly to him, and he listened and was like, "Yeah, that's interesting, but not quite. No, sorry. Yeah, no, I don't think so." And I think he gave me 2 20-minute pitch sessions. I was like, "Oh man," you know. again, I felt like I had this opportunity. And then a few months after that, he called me. It might have even been the following season, in the fourth season. He called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Rene, it's Michael. We have a story here. It's dead. Nobody can figure it out, but I like the premise. It's about Beverly Crusher. We want to feature Beverly Crusher. We want to feature her skills as a doctor. We think the teaser is that we find some guy on a planet somewhere, and he's, half his body's ripped off. Just he's blown in half, but she brings him back to life. But that's all we got. That's all we got. So if you can crack this, I'll give you a chance to write it."
Wow. That was Transfigurations?
Very good. Very good. Yes, it was. It was. I've said this before. Michael Piller not only gave me my first big break in this business, he gave me my second big break when I met him. It's a big break. So he's a rare person in Hollywood. But I'm happy to talk about the episode as well. Maybe I shouldn't have divulged the paucity of authorship so quickly.
I think that's I think, first of all, Rene, I think this is one of the best episodes I've ever watched. The emotions that I felt watching it were amazing. I wrote down a ton of lines from it. I thought it was just, the story was beautiful.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful. And it brought me to tears. I was actually worried that I would be tearful just conducting this interview, because that's how I felt watching it. Specifically now as a father, it meant that much to me. One thing that I did love about it is, you mentioned Melinda, and to her credit, Measure of a Man is also one of my favorite episodes of this series. And so this is up there with the best episodes I've seen so far of The Next Generation. This is just great science fiction. And what it does is it paints Picard in a very good light, because he is in defense of Data and the rights of sentient beings. So I think that's one thing it accomplishes to a high level. The portrayal of Picard as this person who stands on righteousness, even willing to sacrifice his own career, per se, in Starfleet to make this point. So I thought that was great. The idea of parents was just amazing. But I wanted to talk specifically with one thing that ended up becoming a very relevant issue in today, and that is the idea of choosing gender as a person, having the ability, the right to do that. And I thought how prescient for this to kind of cover that subject matter when it is a very serious issue that we deal with today in society. So I thought that was one of the main home run topics that I could not believe that you guys were talking about, 30 years before it was even really an issue, or 20 years before. Yeah. So tell me about that.
Well, part of that was, and you're right. I think part of that was that it was 1988, 1989. I was living in New York City. I was living in the East Village of New York City. And, I remember seeing RuPaul, when just starting out, there was a big gay community there, a big, at the time, the word was transvestite, and it was a big part of the nightclub scene. I had a lot of gay friends. It was also, it was the AIDS epidemic as well was happening. So all that stuff was very front and center. And as I said, that was a beat that I had in my original. Both that that Lal chose their species, and gender and basic appearance. I was glad to see it go through. Wasn't necessarily, and it was so offhand, that it had its I guess its power, if you want to call it that. Star Trek at the time handled some of those issues, ahead of the curve, but often in an allegorical way, or with a kind of spin on it. We did that on Deep Space Nine with that episode with Jadzia, and a former host, a former relationship.
Right.
It was just, our concept was
I mean, you dealt with the issue without, overly hitting us over the head with the significance of it. It just was presented, dealt with, and we moved on. But I thought it was very ahead of its time, relative to current standards. I also wanted to ask you, as a father, this was one of the greatest. I wrote down so many lines. I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my little note sheet. But yeah, as I observe Law learning about her world, I share in her experience almost as though I am learning things over again. I mean, that's how it feels watching, watching your child learn things and go through things, and you start to see yourself in it, and you see your own facial expressions. You relearn things yourself. I doing homework and stuff. You start saying, "Hey, I know this." I'm learning it again, but I kind of know it already. So that just rang true to me, along with all other sentiments about parenting, that I can't understand how you got so well without being a parent as well. I mean, you did explain Michael Pillar and Snodgrass's, fingerprints, but ultimately the idea of parenting, what a great subject matter to start with.
Absolutely. And, I think what's even more remarkable in what, was crafted, what we all crafted, I'll take some credit, but Melinda and Michael especially, is that, and I'm remembering this now, when I got there, there was some friction in the staff. There were people who had already decided to move on. Melinda had already decided this was her last season. I believe Ira moved on as well. There have been several executive producers that year. Michael had just come in, and something had just gone down. And everyone kept walking around because we were talking about what the episode was going to be. And I didn't understand it. Everybody kept saying, well, yeah, but Data's a toaster. And I'd be like, yeah, Data's a toaster. Okay, what does that mean? Everybody kept saying, well, yeah, well, no, you can't do that. You can't have them get upset because Data's a toaster. And basically they had just gone through, and I don't know what episode it was, a big writing staff producer sort of showdown about Data and whether Data could feel anything ever. And it came down, it was a thing that reached all the way up to Gene Roddenberry, who, the thing I said earlier today, who basically said, he came in and said, look, the minute Data has emotions, his story is over. His journey is over. He wants to be human. It's that want that makes him interesting and different from everybody else. And so for writers who you have so many ideas about great stories you could tell about Data and this or that, to be told that felt very limiting. But it's the kind of thing that I came to learn over the years. You got to be you have to be sitting in that chair, the showrunner chair. Sometimes you get the perspective, where you have to look at the good of the entire series and the life of the series that you want to run for 5, 6, 7 years, and not just one good episode. And so it was a hard call for them to hear. But the challenge was, how do you create a compelling story about a toaster having a child, as they called it? So the fact that they were able to craft that, and I think the way they cracked that conundrum was, okay, well, what if Lal has emotion, but that's a malfunction, you know? And there's some wonderful dialogue about that, as well.
Beautiful.
And so she was able to feel things, even though Data technically wasn't. Though we always
Yeah.
would project feelings onto him. Even he could tell he wanted, but there was, that was Brent. The actor brought something.
Right. I was going to say that's what worked for the audience, is that sure, you can't give Data emotions, and sure, Lal, her emotions are a malfunction and all this, but the audience is feeling those emotions because they can put themselves in that position, and they're not an android. They know, if I were in this position, I would be very sad. We're very sad for Data. And we do imagine, we kind of look, we're like, he's got to be feeling something. Like, he's just being like we kind of put it on him, like, that poor guy, he definitely feels something. And the actor Brent Spiner, yes, he gives us just a tiny little glimmer, or a little lean, or a little head nod that makes us say that's like the root of an emotion or something there.
Yeah, there's an episode that's in that vein. It's one of my favorites. And it was where Data had a romance, and there was a gal on the ship who basically said, "I like you. I like being with you. Be my boyfriend." And he was like, "Sure." And Joe Manosky wrote it, and it was just a wonderful. I think it was called In Theory, and it was a wonderful. Because Data at the end of the day, he didn't feel anything, and he was just doing it because he thought it was interesting, and she was nice. He liked her. Did he love her? No. And she realizes that and breaks up with him, and he's not even sad, and she's kind of realizing that the whole thing was her own. It was her neediness that, I don't know if you guys remember that episode, but it's a small gem.
I do vaguely. I remember Data. I think he's pretending to be mad in an argument just because he thinks that's how humans are supposed to feel. Or basically, he's going through the motions for her benefit. And then she ends up kind of finding out, wait a minute, you're not really feeling anything. You're just going through the motions. But it's sad. It's funny. We go through the whole gamut of emotions because it's a great script.
Yeah, it really was.
Well, we only have a minute left with you, Rene, but I know, sorry, Sirach, I know you're about to say something.
I just wanted to double congratulate you on this episode. I mean, it's so fantastic. Like I said, moved me to tears, had me laughing. Literally, I was laughing a few times out loud. And as I was laughing out loud, I wrote down LOL, and I realized, well, that's law. So thank you for the laughs. Thank you for the cries. I just feel like you really gave us something special that is in the vein of, like, The Visitor. Even though it's telling the story of these androids, it talks about the story of being a parent more than anything. And I think that's one of the real gems that I walk away with. I also wanted to ask really quickly about Jonathan Frakes. Was that a luck of the draw that you get Jonathan Frakes to direct this episode, who has this sensitivity with with his directing style and with getting the best out of actors?
It was my first episode. It was also his first episode as a director. It was a very lucky match because it was, simple, and for your first episode, it's like, hey, it's about actors, it's about performances, it's not about getting fancy, so in that regard, and obviously he went on, it was just something he thought he wanted to try, and he went on, obviously, to probably be the most prolific of all of that Star Trek actors in terms of directing, so
yeah, he really is.
I agree 100%. So, I mean, what a great match for you both to have your first on an episode as really remarkable as this. Very few episodes move me to the level of tears that I watch, and very few that I just don't get connected that much. But this had me literally teared up. So once again, Renee, thank you so much for being with us, sharing the story, and also giving the Star Trek world such a beautiful gift. And also thanks to Michael Pillar too for having the foresight to say, let's reach into the audience and the fan base and bring in some great stories for the franchise. Amazing for Michael Pillar to bring that also contribution to this Star Trek.
And the humanity to do so as well, because a lot of times you give somebody a first chance. And Rene, you say you felt like you botched it. A lot of people would have just moved on, but he was like, you know what? I'm going to give this guy some more opportunities because he's got something. You wowed him initially. Yeah. He didn't let that go. And I do think that's great by Michael Pillar. I wish I'd known him. He seems like an amazing guy. But Rene, thank you so much for joining us. We've been singing your praises for years. We will continue to do so, but it's so great to finally have you on our show. We really appreciate you, your work, and your time today. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. It's great to meet you, and it's good to see you again, Sarah. It's been a while.
Thank you, Rene. Well, It's been too long. But I'm glad that I finally got to watch these episodes and give you your praise because the running joke was that none of the actors could identify who the writers were for a while. And now I know, Rene, it's you. You gave us some beautiful gems, and I'm glad I finally get to say that to you in person. That I love your work, big fan of your work, and thank you. Thank you.
Great. Now, everybody stick around. We will be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
We've got the Trivioids coming up in just a second. But before we do that, very special thanks to Oliver James Manal for sponsoring today's episode, this week's episode. We really appreciate it. Great episode. Here are the Trivioids of the week, of the episode. Commander Riker is away on personal leave. That was interesting. Enterprise is charting the Celebi asteroid belt. Ever since Data has come back from that cybernetics conference, he spent every off-duty minute in a lab. There was a new submicron matrix transfer technology introduced at the conference. Data has scanned all available literature on parenting. That was cute. Data teaches Lal to blink. Wesley Crusher is late for his haircut. And the word Lal in Hindi means beloved. All right. So much to talk about. Man, Rene was awesome to talk to. So glad we finally got him.
And watch his new show, Carnival Row, which he was plugging a little bit on Amazon. So I think there's another season coming up of that. So
season 2, I believe he was saying. So definitely check out Carnival Row. We didn't get a chance to talk about that, but hopefully he will be back and we can talk about it with him next time. Thanks for pointing that out. So, all right. Riker, when they first started off with Riker is away on leave, my first thought was, oh, is this just like a non-Riker episode? And the writers are telling us this ahead of time, like maybe he's going to get married or, there's something. In which case I'm like, they don't necessarily have to tell us. But then towards the end of the episode, when he shows up, I'm like, I get it. They wanted to specifically let us know he's not here so that when he shows up, he's like, God, I just show up and the ladies, they must have missed me. Hey, what a guy.
Yeah. It was his cameo was the best in this episode. What a moment there when Data kind of calls him out and says, Commander, what are your intentions with my daughter?
That was hysterical.
That was
also, before we get too deep into all the millions of things we liked, did you recognize the actor that played Lal before Hallie Todd, before Lal picked her gender? It is a
How could
friend
you
of the
recognize?
yeah, it's a friend of the show, somebody that was on our show before. For Angel One, it's Leonard Crowfoot.
Crowfoot.
Remember our favorite guy? That was
Yes.
him.
So he was underneath all of that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, he does have a petite frame, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That was my drawing of that guy.
That's Leonard Crowfoot.
That's a good one.
You could tell that's him right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, you could tell.
But great job by him. I thought that was really cool. I
Yeah.
was very happy to see him again. Just one of the nicest guys we've ever had on the show. He's unbelievable. So it's really cool to see him a second time on the show. Let's talk about Hallie Todd, shall we? There were some moments where I kind of started taking notes like, she's acting a little too emotional for an android, in my opinion. And then I realized that's deliberate. They're giving little hints. You know, when she was kind of getting mad at the admiral, like they're giving that little hint, and then the next scene she's frightened and all that. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was amazing that that's Frakes' first, directing job. It was just like, what a perfect storm this episode was, right?
Yes, and her performance was amazing as well. I thought there were just moments there that were so beautiful. The fact that she felt comfortable to come to Troy and share that feeling with Troy,
Great.
that was a nice moment there. When Guinan says, "Lol, how are you?" and she says, "I'm functioning with a normal." I'm fine. I love that. I thought it was just the performance was excellent, excellent on her part as a guest star in this episode. I felt the curiosity. I felt the elevator scene where Lal says, "What's the significance of laughter?" And Data explains laughter, and she says, "Well, without understanding humor, I have somehow mastered it." And it was clear that the kids were laughing at her, right? And she didn't understand that concept, which was just a great, great, clever writing to me, because Data is looking at her like, "Whoa, I think they were laughing at you and not with you." So just those kinds of moments were great because it was parenting at its finest. And I also loved Data's moments with Picard when he is drawing this red line in the sand about, no, I'm the parent. I'm not good with it. I'm not giving my kid over. There were several moments where Data would just draw this line with Picard, like, no, that's not going to work for me. And I thought, wow, that's great. Great writing, great performances as well.
One of the most memorable moments in all of Star Trek for me, just a moment that just sticks in my head, was when Wes throws the ball at Lal and it just hits her in the shoulder. And then she goes,
yeah.
Like, I don't know why. That
Yes.
stayed with me since childhood, that scene. It was so funny and so well delivered and so simple. Okay.
The drinking scene too was also on that level where she drinks and then it just
There were some amazing things. Also, I do want to mention, we talked about this during the break, but Whoopi Goldberg did, I thought, her best performance to date when Lal says, "Father said I would benefit greatly," or whatever it was, from working. I would learn a great deal from working with somebody as old as you. Of course, she's a very old person. She's an alien. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. But we all know what the emotions there were. And we all know the innocence of Data telling her, "Oh, she's very old. You will learn a lot from her." I mean, it's all very innocent, but it's hilarious. But the main thing was Whoopi Goldberg's look that she gave. She trusted the camera to pick it up. She trusted the audience to get it. She didn't overdo it. She didn't oversell it. It was a perfect acting clinic in 1 3-second reaction, and the delivery of, she looks at him like, and then she goes, "You're hired." With that, like, all is forgiven. You're hired, kind of. But it was just golden. It was magical.
Yeah.
I know it's a very short thing, but that was A+ acting in my opinion.
I wrote the same notes down. That working with someone as old as you line was just like, it was like beautifully delivered. The reaction shots, even from Data's perspective, when they had the close up on Data, he kind of was like, "Yeah, that's what I said, and it's a matter of fact that you're old." So he was also delivering
Yes, yes,
his facials as well, while Whoopi was giving her look of like, uh, I got you, buddy. I heard what you
yeah,
said."
yeah. He's looking at her like,
Uh,
yeah, that's right. You've mentioned it yourself. You're very old.
yes, yes. So I thought that was great. Like I was telling Renee about the way it makes Picard look when he was having those scenes with Admiral Half Off or Half Tail.
Half off.
Yeah, he was being a real half off, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
Uh, but geez, I mean, come on with the ball breaking already. Like, let the guy, have his kid. Um,
You
but
know,
yeah, the scenes with Picard, it made Picard look like a great leader. Somebody who's
beautiful.
going to stand up for his guys. And I thought that's the kind of that's what you're looking for in your captain.
I have a confession to make, which is when I was watching this episode, especially in the second half, when Picard was having those conversations with the Admiral, and then he was coming back and having that conversation with Data, and he was taking the opposing view with both of them, you know, which is a great way to go.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to mediate. He's trying to figure out the right answer. He's trying to, do it well. And it was so beautifully written. And I thought when those things were happening, I said, this is written in Melinda Snodgrass's voice. I very, very much recognized it to the point where I looked on IMDb to make sure that it wasn't, two writers, including herself. But then you figure, okay, she's in the writer's room, there's this and that. Or maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's my imagination. So I thought it was really interesting when Renee told us that she had, in fact, massaged some things, added some things. Her voice is very
Yeah.
recognizable. And I think it's just a
Mm-hmm.
travesty that we don't have her throughout, the next generation.
Especially in the defense of his crew. The
Mm-hmm.
voice of Picard defending his crew it's unmistakably Melinda Snodgrass. She is putting a level of integrity into Picard's character that is not emphasized as much in certain other
Mm-hmm.
situations.
She writes words that good actors love to say. You could tell that the lines she's writing, he's looking at this and he's going, yes, this is a gift. This is a gift that I will really enjoy performing. Yeah, great stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, and those kinds of lines, I wrote a few of them down, but like when Law was asking about what is my purpose to Data, and he says our function is to contribute in a positive way to the world in which we live.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just a great summation of life in general. And those other moments there too were like the struggle to strive to be more than we are. Sentient is the awareness to question and examine your perceptions. There were a bunch of these lines throughout this um, episode that I thought were just excellently
Mm-hmm.
delivered, thought provoking. Um, and yes, the question of parenting, the question of life, the question of being sentient. These were all very serious topics being addressed here, which is also similar to the themes of Measure of a Man, which is almost like this is like
Mm-hmm.
Measure of a Man Part 2 to some degree, right?
Totally. And
Yeah.
look, I found it to be, I put in my notes that it was brilliant to have Lal in 10 forward with Guinan. I thought that's a brilliant idea. That is the perfect way for her to learn about humans, right? Or about people in general. Guinan's not a human. Not everybody's a human there, but she's there. She's observing people when they are off, when they're just being people. And that was such a smart move, just like it was a smart move for her to then go to Counselor Troy when she felt fear. I thought that was a very good use of Troy and Guinan. I can't say enough great things about this episode. It made me laugh several times. I thought about you, Sirach, a few times. Ryan thought of Sirach when, I feel like that's every episode. There's 1 to 4 times where I think of you, and towards the end when Data is having his moments with Lal, or when he's fighting for Lal, or when he mentioned, like, he says, well, I don't think that, the Admiral had much experience as a parent before he had his children, or whatever his exact line was. These are all such smart lines, and I felt like, I wish I was watching it for the first time, because I can only imagine how it hit for you when you were watching it the first time.
Yeah, I was blown away. The scene where Guinan and Lal are in 10 forward and they're watching the couple kind of in the corner schmoozing with each
The
other. I thought that was
canoodlers.
it. Yeah, I thought that was another great scene because she's like, they're communicating telepathically. And Guinan's like, they're thinking the same thing, if that's what you mean,
He's biting that female.
Yeah. And then she's like, where are they going? And she's like, a guy is like, well, your dad's gonna have to tell you about that.
Yeah.
Very good scenes. Yeah, and then when it got down to the moment where, the redemptive moment for Admiral Half Off or Half Tail, his redemptive moment was after the surgery, right? Or
Right.
during the surgery when he offers to help Data kind of perform the surgery, and then he comes out and he has that speech about Data trying everything he can to save her, and I never seen somebody's hands move so fast, and all of that.
Yeah.
That was when they gave some redemptive qualities to the Admiral, which I was beginning to really say, why is this jerk in charge? But then he seemed to have turned a corner, and I grew a heart somewhere in that laboratory when they were doing that surgery.
He was moved by
But
Data. He was
he was
moved by
moved.
Data, just like we were hearing the story, which is,
Yes.
again, us, kind of personifying Data. We're putting our own emotions on him. He doesn't have emotions, but we feel like he does, because he's saying, I've never seen anybody move so fast. His hands were moving so quickly, trying to stay ahead of it. We're picturing that a parent would do anything to save their child. Like we hear of parents like lifting a car to get their daughter out from under it, or
Yeah.
just amazing feats, and of not giving up, of trying so hard. So of course that's Data being an android, but we hear these stories, we recognize it, and we feel the emotions that anybody would in that kind of situation, even if theoretically the character does not.
Yeah, and that guy did a couple of things that I thought were really big digs in this episode. The Admiral Halftel, who actually did a good job because he's there to play the role like that, and he did a very good job as far as what
Yeah.
he was asked to do. But one of the things he says is, you haven't been taught about selective judgment in the verbalization of your own thoughts. And he's telling Law, like, you need to watch what you say to me, type
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Ooh,
then,
yeah, that was a little sharp there.
that was sharp. And then he says something to the effect of 60 trillion calculations, and you got her working as a cocktail waitress. Another dig. Then he tells the Picard, "You're not a parent, Captain." Another dig. It was just like there was moment after moments where he was just taking shots at everybody. who was in his way, and
Hmm.
I thought they wrote this character really well. I mean,
I thought
Renee
so too.
mentions that, yeah, Renee mentions they needed another out to kind of to kind of close out the story instead of the virus. So this was a very good out. I thought this admiral, his presence, him saying we need, to study her at this facility. I thought very good storyline, very good way to expand the story. Which, by the way, the pace of this episode moved so quickly that I couldn't even believe it was up already.
Yeah, exactly. I was amazed at how much they crammed in this episode and how well it
Yeah,
moved. I was like, I mean, sometimes we feel like they don't have enough story for an episode. Other times,
yeah,
like this one, it felt like, wow, how did we get all this? We had a full
yeah.
story arc that did not feel in any way forced. It did not feel in any way like we wish we could have seen more of X, Y, or Z. It
Yes,
was nearly a perfect script. It was an
I
excellent
agree.
story. It
Yes.
moved very quickly. That's like a clinic on how you write a 43-minute television episode.
100%. I didn't miss a second. I love the whole like trying on different looks, like, oh, an Andorian female, a human
Mhm,
male. I thought those were just amazing. I
mhm.
love the whole congratulations, Data, it's a girl. I mean, there were just so many good lines, and even the opening scene where Wesley, Jordy, and Troy are walking down the corridors, and there's that sense of camaraderie between them. Like
Yeah.
Jordy's like, "How do you know it was locked all the time,
Yeah.
Wesley?"
You little rascal, Wesley. He's like, "Oh, I don't know." Very
So
good.
those
Very
moments,
yeah.
levity,
Mhm.
um,
And it
and
built
they
the
even managed to squeeze
tension and
Worf's voice into it. I didn't see Worf, but I heard his voice.
yeah, we saw him at the very end only. Yeah.
Okay,
Only at the
okay,
very end, because I was watching for that too, like Worf and Geordi were at the very end when Data walks in and they said, "We're sorry for your loss," and stuff like that. But I
okay.
also wanted to mention Picard and Halfwit. What was his name? You
Half
got me
tell.
Halftel. You got me all shook up too now. When Picard and he and Data were having their meeting, and Halftel was saying every parent must let his kids go. And then Picard's like, but this is not the time, damn it, things like that.
Hmm.
And then Data saying, this is my duty to raise my child, not Starfleet's. Great. And then
Hmm.
Halftel says, then I regret that I must order you. And then Picard says, belay that order, Mr. Data. And then that's when we're like, oh boy,
Oh shit!
somebody's stuff's getting
Yeah.
spicy all of a sudden. And then Halftel goes, I beg your pardon. I was like, ooh, spicy. And he says, proceed, Commander. Picard says, hold, Mr. Data. Data's like, I don't know what to do. Everybody's fighting over me. And then, anyway, just
Yes,
that was just really a
there was
tense scene.
tension there.
Yeah.
Yes, there was tension there. Um, there was tension this whole episode because it was like there was this uncertainty. There was. I like the scene where they tried to make Lal go to school and put her with the older kids and then with the younger kids, and they were trying to figure this thing out. And it is like parenting. You're trying to figure out how to be the best parent you can. You're trying to give them the best experience. You're trying to impart the knowledge. Um, but one of the touchy moments there was just when Data walks back onto the bridge and he's like, no, I downloaded her, like I got her all up. She's like, here, she's with me. And that was a moment too that kind of was touchy for me, and had me tearing up because that's what we take with us when we lose somebody, right?
Mhm.
We take all the memories that we've downloaded, with that person, and we can see their smile, we can see the moments that we shared together, and you can kind of relive, visit those in your mind. So that was another kind of poignant moment for me as well. I just felt this moment hit all the right notes, um, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to losing somebody that you love. Even though it was told, with two androids and using artificial intelligence as the main driving force of the story, it's still hit home for me in a big way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is time for the home run of the episode, everybody. God, I wish we could talk about this episode way more, but it's time for the home run of today's episode. What do you think? Who hits the home run today, Sirach?
Well,
It's a
I'm
toughie.
going to give it's a toughie. First, I'll say that I thought all the performances were A1. They were all A+ performances. I didn't see a bad performance or somebody who stood out and said, that didn't. I believe everyone this episode. But ultimately, I'm going to give it to the Duke University graduate, Mr. Rene Echeverria.
Wow, Duke. Nice.
Yeah, shout out to Dr. Mohammed Noor. We
Yeah.
have another Duke guy in the house. But I think Rene hit it out of the park. I think this is one of the best episodes I've seen so far. I'd put it in my top 3 list out of the episodes we've reviewed so far of Next Generation.
Yeah,
And
Measure of a
really,
Man, Yesterday's Enterprise, and this one probably, right?
yes, yeah, that's the 3. And which would make it on the top 10 of all Star Trek that I've seen, because it's up there so far in the top 10 of all Star Trek. Because, like I said, when you watch an episode and it makes you cry, it makes you laugh, what else do you want from, you got the full range of
In
emotions.
43 minutes. What a deal.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to give it to Rene. I think for a first-time writer coming out, giving us a great storyline. I know he mentioned the help that he got there with the wonderful, late great Michael Piller, Melinda Snodgrass, and her feel and touch. But I'm going to give the episode home run to Rene. I think he just hit this one out of the park.
Mm-hmm. Could not agree with you more. When an episode is this good, look, the performances were great. Marina Sirtis had a great moment when she saw Data holding the foot. At the beginning, she did like a thing where she like looked to try to, I rewound it like 3 times to see that reaction. Great reaction, great acting. Whoopi, Hallie, Leonard Crowfoot, Admiral
Patrick Stewart.
Halftel as well. Don't know his name offhand. Uh, Great directorial debut by Jonathan Frakes. But when you have an episode that is this beautifully written, that really is the bread and butter of this episode. And so absolutely it goes to Mr. Rene Echeverria. If you want to say that Michael Piller and Melinda Snodgrass were on base and he hit them home or vice versa, I don't know. But the writing is what did it for this episode. You know what else does it for us is our friends that we'd like to give a very special thanks to. And their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom TJ, Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Moeller, Dr. Mohammed Noor, the aforementioned, Tierney C. Diekman, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manisfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom out in Hawaii, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, aka Grandpa One, and of course, no stranger to Hawaii himself, maybe, Jason Oken. All right, everybody, stick around. We will be right back on the 7th Rule with the Free for All. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Sirach frickin' Lofton. This is the Free for All with Melissa Longo.
Hello.
Jason M. Oken, who has been to Hawaii before, hopefully. No? Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, who's currently in Wisconsin.
Hi.
We've got Carrie Schwent, a.k.a. Crafty Bear. The Dark Lord, Chris McGee, is here. He's ready to tell us things. Allison Leach Hyde is here as well, wearing a cool shirt. Can't really tell what it is, but it looks cool. Yeah, Deep Space Nine. And the Matt Boardman wearing a deep cut Enterprise shirt, everybody. What luck. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Wow. I'm going to say a 9.1.
Wow, 9.1. That is quite a number. Does anybody else have any guesses that does not already know the answer?
8.8. IMDb, accounting for all kinds of tastes, probably about 8.5.
All right. And the winner of the Jason M. Oken Award is Jason M. Oken. It is an 8.5 on IMDb.
Nice. Wow.
All right.
Right on.
Did we have any non-appearance mentions today? I thought we had Commander Riker as a non-appearance mention, but that went out the door at about the 25-minute mark.
Dr. Soong.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you're right. Very good. I missed that. That is very good. Dr. Soong. Although I was a little confused why they didn't mention Lore in that moment, but I guess he's presumed dead, right? At that point. Let me see, Dr. Soong. All right. Hey, Chris, do we have any some kind ofs or some sorts of today?
Not that I caught anyway, no. Anyone else?
All right. Well, let's just get into this. Melissa Longo, enough chit-chat, right? Can we get into this one? Ooh, you got Riker behind you in his directorial debut. Maybe that's why, because he was busy directing. So this was, oh, duh.
Yes, that is why.
There you go.
just realized that. Melissa, what do you think of this episode?
This episode is one of the reminders of why I get really excited about Star Trek. I adore this episode. I adore Data. I adore Lal. I adore this entire story. I was rooting for Lal from the moment that she was activated, before she chose her identity, to the moment that her neural systems ended. Yes, I love her. I love her curiosity. I love her unpredictability. I just love this story. I love that the story further explores what constitutes life and all of the questions that naturally arise from that exploration. To pick one moment or one quote is nearly impossible, because this episode is littered with such memorable quotes and such poignant moments, touching moments, humorous moments. But there was one moment where I had to rewind at least 3 times, because every time I watched it, I giggled. And that was the moment when Riker comes in and says, "You're new around here, aren't you?" And Log looks at him side-eyed and goes, "Yes." And then grabs him and plants a big wet one on the kisser. It was so funny, and I laugh every time I see that. And I will leave it with one important thing that I took away from this episode. One of the important things that I took away from this episode is the importance of wonder. And I need to be reminded of how important wonder and awe and curiosity in the world around us is. And Law definitely reminded me of that. I have a lot more to say after things left unsaid, because this episode is just too good. And I have some questions for everyone for things left unsaid. So, yeah.
That was positively wicked when you went like this. There was something going on there. Thanks very much, Melissa Longo. Jason M. Oken, who's never been wicked a day in his life. What did you think of this episode?
Well, it's certainly one of those episodes that I think people think of when a 3rd season of Next Gen is brought up. It's certainly one of the highlights, and it's a wonderful, wonderful character story. And obviously we have themes of what it means to be a person. What does it mean to be alive, and and individuals' rights. I mean, all of that is discussed, but we've seen that in The Measure of a Man. But this is more of a character story. If you compare the two, maybe there's a lot more sort of themes raised in The Measure of a Man, but this connects more on a personal level, and I think to a great degree, at least the way I saw it this time, is it really is carried forward by the performances. And that to me, was highlighted after I read the script, because it really looks even better than it is on the page, which is kind of the opposite of what I've seen, some other times. I mean, a lot of it is, a lot of credit goes to the actors Haley Todd and Brent. I don't think it's certainly one of his best performances throughout the entire run. Sometimes being understated. And if you know what Brent is like in real life, it's sort of anti-Brent if you kind of look at this, at the performance itself. It's a wonderful performance. And to see essentially a bottle show when there's just talking throughout the entire episode, and it captures your attention, and you sit and you look at it right throughout. Not that there's nothing to nitpick, and you can do that, and we can talk about other things later. But it's certainly a wonderful hour. It's to a large degree, it's a tearjerker. It has a sad ending, but sort of a happy twist that not everything is lost and Data retains the memories. And it's just a wonderful hour of television.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Jason M. Oken. Yeah. Lal is not lost. You can see her anytime on Paramount Plus. So Dr. Anne-Marie Segal is here. What's up, Anne-Marie? What do you think of this one? First time watching it?
Well, first of all, I'm like, I don't know what to do about the lighting in here because there's about to be a blizzard. But
Wow.
yeah. No, I love it. And I actually, after STSF, I was like super like, I need to watch Star Trek, especially a Data episode. And I looked at our upcoming schedule. So my dad and I watched it, and it was just like so fun to laugh, like at Lal and Riker, like the first time I did like a million years ago. But yeah, I mean, it's just a beautiful episode, and if you're not crying at the end, like you're probably not even a suit android.
Yep. Great stuff. Thank you, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal. Great episode for the whole family. Carrie Schwent is here, aka Crafty Bear. What's up with you, Carrie? What'd you think of this one?
This one is another just absolutely fantastic one, and as a parent, it definitely hits close to home, and is another one with the deep dive that has points that definitely hit very close to home. As someone who had, for a brief moment, their child actually taken away from them, very briefly. I've talked to other people about that, so we won't go into any further detail on that. But the admiral that shows up and wants to take Lal away, I just like, nuh-uh, don't you dare. I mean, I like you as an actor. You're in that excellent Dr. Quinn episode that Robert O'Reilly is in, and I love listening to your voice, but you have just such a punchable face in this episode. But I love so I've got both offsprings behind me. I've got Lal and my own offspring here on my other shoulder. And when Data's describing watching Lal learn stuff and enjoying watching her figure out her world, reminded me of the first time I took Vincent to his very first concert. He was about 7. We took him to see the Eagles, and I think I spent half of the concert watching him watch the concert. He was just having a blast. He loved the Eagles. He knew all the lyrics. He was singing along the whole time. It was just so adorable. Episode is definitely a roller coaster. You're 1 minute you're laughing your ass off, the next at the end you're bawling your eyes out. He's biting that female line has been a favorite of my husband since before I met him, and has been a part of his sort of vocabulary, and it's become a part of ours. We'll be watching one TV thing or another, and somebody will smooching, and we'll both say it at the same time. Just absolutely hysterical. Definitely a staple. Probably my favorite line in probably all of Star Trek. Every single season, anything Star Trek produced, that line is the number one in this particular household.
Oh,
Yep. Got all that. I got all that. Okay. So to end my time, I will finish with my limerick. And I was gonna come at it from Law's point of view, but then it ended up sort of coming more from Data's. Human behavior can sometimes be strange. Just when you figure it out, it will change. But we never stop trying to find help worth applying. Some things they do, though, cannot be explained. And
great
Guinan was an
stuff.
excellent teacher.
Yeah, she was.
Mm.
Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear. The Dark Lord Chris McGee is here. What's up, Chris? What'd you think of this one?
Oh my goodness, The Offspring. Well, Rene Echeverria absolutely knocked it out of the park with his first Star Trek script, and Frakes did an amazing job during his directorial debut. Such an incredibly touching, sweet, and highly emotional episode. Acting by everyone is fantastic, the writing superb, of course, and the story unforgettable. I appreciate the arc that Picard seems to travel in this episode, starting from a position of denial and refusing to acknowledge Lal as a child to fighting for Data and Lal's rights at risk to his own career. It might even be the tipping point of Picard finally discovering what he's been missing by not having children of his own. Something worth maybe remembering for later episodes. On a lighter note, this is our third review in a row where we get yet another relatively meme famous facepalm-ish. And of course, as Melissa and Anne-Marie have already mentioned, the scene with Lal kissing a very surprised Riker and then him becoming confused when Data breaks out the father routine on him is pure comedy gold and never fails to make me laugh. Oh, and props to Whoopi Goldberg for insisting that her line be changed from when a man and a woman are in love to when two people are in love. That's a great, memorable quote of the episode.
Memory Alpha, sorry, where they actually tried to have two men in the background, like in 10 forward,
Yes.
that, and then they got a call from like the studio upstairs saying that they had to cut that.
At least we got the line change. That's a step in the right direction. So, the memorable quote of the episode is not only memorable and, of course, brings me to tears every time, but as a Christian, I have even included it in my prayers. And that's one of Lal's final lines. Thank you for my life.
Yeah, that was a beautiful line. Thank you very much, Chris McGee. Allison Leach Hyde is here. What's up, Allison? Did you like this episode? Hate it? How'd you feel?
Well, I too love this episode. I've been only slightly dreading watching it because I'm like, I'm going to cry. I'm not in the mood to cry. I don't want to cry. So I've been like pushing it back and pushing it back. I'm like, there's so much humor in this episode too, but the ending gets me every time. And everyone acted beautifully in it. Especially, I really loved the actor who did the Admiral at the end. His last line is the one that just makes me bawl.
Yeah.
Every time him saying, his hands are moving faster than I could see. And I'm just like, ooh. So, I have to be in a mood to watch this one. So I had to also gird my loins, as it were. I'm like, I'm going to do it. We're reviewing it tomorrow. I got to watch it. So I do. I love it. And I love that you see that Data has like 3 best friends and they're there for him throughout the entire episode. Whenever he needed them, they were there. And I love that he taught that to Lal. So when Lal felt emotions for the first time, she didn't go to her dad. She went to Troy. She's like, I need help. I don't understand what's going on. And I thought that was truly wonderful, because I'm like, you're right, your dad would tell you that, or it would be something you have learned, that this is an emotional thing. Like, I have to go to Troy. That's what she's for. Like, that's her job. And she's my dad's friend. So I thought that was wonderful. And I love the painting in the background of Data's quarters. And I love that they keep showing it. Piet Mondrian's Tableau 1 from 1921. So exciting to have that in the background all the time. It always makes me happy. I'm like, I love that painting. And I think my favorite line is, he's biting her.
Yes.
is a weird thing. So for seeing it for the first time as someone with vocabulary, yeah, that's what it looks like. So I love it, but it's hard for me to watch, especially as a parent. So
Great stuff. Thanks, Allison Leach Hyde. The actor's name, we should have given him a shout out earlier. His name is Nicholas Koster. He's the one that plays the Admiral. He's still acting, it looks like, unbelievably. He was just in The Bay for like 13 years. He played 65 episodes he was in. He played Jack Madison in The Bay most recently, in Lessons in Chemistry and The Rookie. Anyway.
And he was in Lessons in Chemistry? How did I not miss?
Yeah.
How did I miss? I love that.
And Dead to Me, which was a pretty good show as well. Anyway, the Matt Boardman is here. What is up, the Matt with the cool shirt? What'd you think of this one?
Well, this is a top episode for me. Absolutely. It never fails to invoke emotions in me. And whether it's, as a parent, whether it's as someone who has parents who, it makes you think. It makes you think. I mean, you watch Data, and this is what I love. Original series Star Trek, we had Spock, who is that lens that we view Star Trek through, or humanity through. Next Generation, we have Data, and I mean, it makes you think about what does it mean to care for another person, to help. At some point, I would imagine all of us have had an opportunity. Excuse me. Whether it be our own kids, whether it be a sibling, whether it be, I don't know, somebody that we volunteered to help, a niece, a nephew, or whatever, that we have had these experiences with, and that make us re-examine what it is, as Melissa said, that wonderment of our life.
Yeah, I felt like the acting was A+ too. I didn't see anybody who didn't do a great performance in this episode. I thought everybody was fantastic. Patrick Stewart was excellent. Whoopi was amazing. Brent was probably one of Brent's best, even though he's had other moments where he was really great.
Mic drop moment after mic drop moment.
It was just everybody, and the guest star. I mean,
he was so good.
Kelly Todd.
Did I miss Jake's final take?
No, we haven't done that yet.
No, I haven't done it yet.
Jake's final take.
Well, I think everybody really said, how you feel when you watch this episode. It's one of the things that was revealed to us when talking with Rene was that he wasn't a father yet, what he thought of this idea. And I thought, wow, how clever of you to think of something that would be so emotional, and the subject matter of parenting is usually something a non-parent doesn't think of, so kudos to him for coming up with that idea and saying, hey, this will be an issue that would be good to time to dig into. When Lal at the end says, I love you, Father, I'm totally tear jerking at that moment. And I want to say part of me feels like, I don't know, I walked away feeling like Data loves Lal, even though he didn't say it. And he says he's not really able to process or comprehend love, but there was a love there because he was fighting for Lal like a parent fights for their kid. That's one of the biggest signs of love, is like refusing to part doing everything you can to save them, trying to show them the world experience, share what knowledge you have with them. I mean, these are the expressions of love that we protectiveness, these are the expressions of love that we all kind of do. And he was doing those things without actually calling it love.
Like Beverly said.
Yeah, so I would say that I walked away feeling like he does love her. It's also interesting that the idea of feelings being a flaw, like that idea in itself was something that was interesting to me. Like, oh wow, she has a flaw because she feels, and it's like, wow. I was curious to know what book was that was in the quarters when Admiral Halftel and Picard were talking. There was a book in a display case, and it seemed to be an important book to Picard because he had it in a display case. And I wondered, what book was that?
Shakespeare.
It's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. That answers that question. And then my final take is actually from a line from the original series episode, which I'm going to recycle for this particular episode. That's how meta we're getting right now. This is a line from Nomad. That unit is a woman, a mass of conflicting impulses. This would have been a better appropriate use of that line.
Sirach venturing into Nomad's land right now.
Yes, there it is.
Hey, what timing, what luck, though. Before we go, Gregory Kenzo is joining us all the way from Hawaii.
Right.
What's up, Greg? Did he freeze up? Just hit right on cue.
Well, at least he's smiling.
Yeah, that's a good picture. Good shot of him. Everybody, Greg will be joining us in Things Left Unsaid. So if you want to know how he feels about this episode and what the weather's like in Hawaii, what's up, Greg? What'd you think of this one? Did you see it?
No, he's muted.
On the spot. Yeah, I did. This is, I think, one of my favorite Data episodes. Just because, there's so many good ones in Data, but this one, it really gets heartfelt. He becomes a father without knowing it, and exhibits just fatherly behavior, like immediately, and that his daughter got to choose their gender. It's amazing. Hope I'm not cutting in and out. I'm using Starlink satellites. It's probably
nice.
terrible, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. That's how Hawaii is. You show up, it's a beautiful day, you hang out, you say some things, everything's awesome. Thanks very much, Greg Kenzo. And thank you to Greg, Jason Oken, Carrie, Matt, Chris, Allison, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Melissa Longo. For Melissa, myself, Sirach, and Aaron Eisenberg, thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.